Hello and welcome to the Racing Room, brought to you by AK Bets. I'm your host, George Ellick, and AK, I can't be the only person listening to this who had no intention of watching the USPGA last night. And then about 9:30, it looked like it was going to be quite interesting, so I then stayed up till 11:30 to watch Scotty Scheffler win by 5 shots. How was that? How was that result for you guys?
Yeah, it was a losing event. I think we were speaking before the podcast. Last 6 majors have been won by 20-1 shots and below, which is probably making me as somebody who does the golf pricing for AK Bets, is probably making me the worst trader in the company right now. Yeah, we were 5-1 top with about 3 or 4 other firms throughout the week on Scheffler, and then we went 11-2 on Thursday morning basically, so it got filled in a little bit more. Bryson would have been a big loser for us. Played really well all week, but just half threw it away, I thought. And yeah, Rory was a very big loser as well, and was never in contention, which was good.
So, top price in the market for the Masters winner, top price in the market for the USPGA winner at time of tee off. So for the US Open, just look out for who's at the top of the market for AK Bets and get on. That's it. Your route to victory.
Just bet everyone under 20-1 and come and collect. I think. Yeah.
How and the Greyhound Derby? How was that for you guys?
Yeah, Graham Davies, it was good from the start, I think. Obviously James does his fastest sectionals, and we were 8 places on the event, so we were paying out the two semi-final fourths would have been paid as a place. It's heating up, I think, a little bit more at the moment. There's a good heat between a few of the prominent dogs coming up this week. But it kind of for general interest, it kind of half tapers off a little bit for us as well. It'll probably pick up a little bit more quarter-final night, I think. But yeah, it's as I mentioned the previous week, it's probably just not capturing the masses' imagination.
As shown by me thinking it was already done. Right. And since you guys recorded the show last week, Tony, some news with Rachel Blackmore announcing her retirement.
Yeah, I was amazed how much kind of like traction this got and on social media. And I think at one point there were about 8 stories on the Racing Post website. But yeah, trailblazer for women in the sport. So much so that, I think we'll come onto the Shergar Cup story in a moment. So much so that, that gender doesn't really come into play in horse racing anymore. Well, it shouldn't anyway.
She's just from an Irish point of view, just from when I'm on course with the lads, it's actually unbelievable. She really has cut through with the public in Ireland massively. It probably isn't appreciated as much in the UK, but honestly, she'd be the only jockey where you get people coming up to you saying, "What's Rachel riding? I want to back that." The casual punters, and it happens all the time at the big meetings. The casual punters know who she is. She's really cut through in Ireland, and yeah, it probably doesn't transfer to the UK just how popular she is over here, I think.
And Harry, you had a nice impromptu day out at York.
I did, yeah. I had a fantastic. I was very lucky. I went racing twice last week. I was at York on Wednesday and Newmarket on Saturday, and they were 2 really good days actually. York's it's actually not that much. You always think it's much more of a schlep from London, but on the rare occasions that trains actually work in this country, it's actually quite easy to get to York for in time for the racing. So we had a great time, yeah. And
did you drive her on a day off, Harry? Or?
No, my helicopter pilot, absolutely, yeah. No, it was good fun. It's good fun to get out there. Don't do it nearly as much as I would like, but yeah.
Did you eat any hot wings?
No, I've not seen this clip, but I've heard all about it. This is Luke Harvey having a sort of breakdown, is it, on ITV from having something to do with a pint of Guinness as well? Is it the same episode?
Yeah, it's you're probably the only person connected to racing who hasn't watched it. Last night he got about 3.6 million views on YouTube.
Oh, really? Oh, right.
Yeah,
how many?
Basically, yeah, it's ridiculously popular. I mean, obviously you spotted it, George, and since then I went looking around on social media, and Ed Chamberlain, in an interview with Dominic King in the Daily Mail, actually admitted it was a setup.
No way.
He had actually, Chamberlain admitted that Harvey had bought the guy a pint of Guinness beforehand, and he was actually applauding the guy for how well he carried it off, the surprise that someone didn't find. So it kind of falls apart a little bit there because it was staged, and you just wonder whether the chicken wings were really that hot. But it
I
divides.
also I smelt two rats. The first was that the guy who he nicked the pint of just conveniently had another full pint of Guinness ready to go that he was sipping on before he was out of fridge.
That's a good spot because they did buy him one. Yeah,
And the second was that Luke Harvey almost started choking on the chicken wing before it even touched his lips. And normally with these things, it takes a little bit of time.
Yes, to
Time
kick
isn't
in.
something you're afforded with live TV, so I can understand why he went early. But yeah, either way, and there was also like a smiling woman behind who was working for the chicken wing company.
Oh yeah.
That suggested she might know what was about to come. But either way, very very good TV and job done for them as well.
Indeed, yeah. The contrived nature of that is probably a good guide to full gallop. We're going to get some contrived.
And Tony, GBR's marketing campaign, The Going Is Good, is due to launch tomorrow on Tuesday.
Yeah, we're going to get some meat on the bones, aren't we, about exactly what's going on there. Lee Motson wrote quite a negative article for him in the Post this morning, maybe worth a read. So yeah, it's got people will just want some detail, and we should be getting that tomorrow. Like I say, it's a big deal for the sport, this, and it needs to work.
Absolutely. And before we get into the racing review, if you enjoy the podcast, if you're liking this, please do subscribe anywhere, whether it's on YouTube or listen to it as a pod, and do like it, comment, everything else. It really helps us reach new audiences. So please do kind of engage in any way possible that you can. Now, the week of racing just gone, cracking week. We had the Dante at York and then plenty of other top class racing also at Newbury. Tony, I'll hand over to you to run through the big stories.
Yeah, obviously the big story was the Dante itself. The Lion in Winter, Derby favourite going into it, disappointed in 6. But a lot of people haven't lost the faith, still 5s for the Derby. The same price as the impressive winner, Pride of Aris. And the runner-up there is at 12s. That's the one that interests me most. I mean, I don't really go into anti-post betting on this podcast, but I think the 12s about Damasus is interesting. I've backed him myself at 14s and 12s. I just thought he shaped really well in second. He's bred to improve for the step up to a mile 4. He sat a bit too far off the pace under Kieran Schumacher. Sorry, Kieran. But yeah, I think there's a lot of improvement in the second. And I read an article from Wafsnam's racing manager Richard Brown last night suggest everything is bang on course for Epsom. So I think around about 12s, including with AK bets, I think Damasus is worth an interest. I mean, the blows keep on coming for Kieran Schumacher. He rode that horse at York, but James Doyle was injured, and he's the retained rider for Wafnam Racing. So I imagine if James Doyle comes back this week and is okay after a long-term injury, then Kieran Schumacher will be taken off the ride. So again, that's probably not ideal for Kieran. What else stuff at York? Musadora, well, who's probably not even going to go for the Epsom Oaks by the sounds of it. Incredibly impressive in the Musadora. Not as impressive as See the Fire, winning by 12 lengths in the Middleton. That seems to be the Nassau at Goodwood next, and then maybe the Juddmonte back at York for that one. That was ridiculously impressive. Other notable performance probably included American Affair, only won a handicap off 98, but sounds like the Temple Stakes this Saturday at Haydock could be the next port of call for that, stepping up to group company. At Newbury on Saturday, lead artist, who was always the ride of Kieran Schumacher, Juddmonte horse. That was the punted winner of the Lockinge, 20s to 17 to 2. Got up close home, re-rallied, or was it rallied? Beat Dancing Gemini, who traded at 10s on in running. Another winner for John Gosden and Faley Gosden and Juddmonte. Again, another kick in the teeth for Kieran Schumacher. Like I said, he'd ridden that horse in all of its previous starts, including 3 wins and 2 group successes. So, you know, I think that decision to actually kind of like take Schumacher off is looking more maybe owned
And
it. They
and
denied.
Beaumark as well in the week, who he rode at Newcastle and was turned over, and then was an odds-on winner, but another impressive winner who's shortened markedly for Ascot.
Yeah, you've got to feel from, isn't it? I mean, we said it before last week. I think if Juddmonte wanted to keep him on his rides, John Gosden would have had to go along with it. But Oisin Murphy, benefited there. It's interesting, just a race postscript to that. An inquiry was held into Oisin removed his skull cap following the race while mounted on the winner. So that got a slap from the BHA. So he lost 140 quid there. That won't be keeping him up at night. But yeah, that was just a little postscript to that. We've got a story on it. We've got a question on it later. Journalism won the Preakness in a very messy race. Most dirt races seems to be. So yeah, that's the even money shot one. The Preakness. And on Sunday, we had a couple of impressive 2-year-old winners. Charles Darwin's favourite for one race at Ascot, that had a procession at 14s on. And Godolphin's 2-year-old Trianne Moore won a modest race at Newmarket yesterday. That's perhaps Coventry bound, and that's 5-1 for that. So that is the racing review at a pace.
Great stuff. Yeah, plenty to get through. So good to go through that fast. And now we'll get into the meat and bones of the show now and go through a few topics before getting to your questions at the end of the show. We'll kick off with a couple of stories, and Harry will come to you on these to kind of explain the significance and what we know about them. The first of which around the Business Post reporting that the state's competition watchdog have searched the offices of Flutter as part of a high stakes investigation into potential competition law breaches. And also the competition authority carrying out a number of dawn raids on businesses active in the Irish betting ring in relation to a criminal inquiry into potential breaches of competition law. These raids are a result of an investigation by the Irish competition, the CCPC, into possible price fixing and anti-competitive behaviour within the betting industry. Yeah, I mean, for those who don't understand the significance of this or what this means, Harry, what can you shed any light on
there's
the story for us?
There's not a great deal to add to that at the moment, because all we have is the statements from the organisation itself, the Irish Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. I think one is assuming that the story about Flutter's offices being investigated as part of a high stakes investigation is part of this, and the story perhaps split into two parts, which was someone finding out about Flutter and then the ICCPC making some kind of press release. We don't know really what it's about. All we're told is that they're looking into suspected non-compliance with competition and consumer protection law. Competition law is astonishingly esoteric. People who do competition law just do competition law, and they don't really do anything else. The only kind of interesting part of it from my point of view is that you do get these dawn raids. It's one of the few areas of the law where you can go full Starsky and Hutch, and kind of you get them sliding across the bonnet of the boot as they turn up at the various offices and jump out. And the idea being that you want to catch people cold if they're involved in any kind of essentially it's price fixing is what, or other anti-competitive behavior, but generally speaking, it's are they talking to other people within their industry in ways they shouldn't about how they are going to price their product. It would be more complex in gambling, I thought, would have thought, than in other products to prove it. But yeah, the fact that it's happening is very interesting. I think it's usually done on the basis of tip-offs that people have been in, people think they have evidence of it going on, whether that's internal or, perhaps other people within the industry going, wait a minute, there's something funny going on here, because but we know very little at the moment. I think there was another one of these investigations a couple of years back, and I'm not sure sort of how far down the line that one's got yet either. So whether we hear much in a hurry, on the basis that we haven't heard much about that one, I suspect we probably won't hear for a while.
My favourite dawn raid was Harry Redknapp's one into alleged.
Oh yeah,
that was a funny one.
Yeah.
Rosie,
any dawn raids with you last week?
But no, if I was probably asleep if there was anyway. Harry Redknapp was Rosie the dog, was it? Rosie the dog, I seem to remember. Bank accounts. Is there a bank account in the name of Rosie the dog now? Just don't know if that's remember Rosie the dog.
That's right. Yeah, it
Something to
was
do with the dog's name or something.
the more racing related one, although it wasn't a Dawn Raid. Was, do you remember Charlie Brooks's PC that
Oh,
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
think was lobbed into a skip or something, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
quite the back catalogue on there.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But no, like it's just really interesting. I've asked around plenty of people, as I'm sure you can imagine, in the last couple of days, and unbelievably, nobody seems to know anything. Or I
Mm.
don't think it's a case of people not saying anything. Nobody really seems to know anything. Um, the information is much tighter than Nicky Henderson's yard coming up to final decks anyway.
I think I
But
read somewhere that there's been an internal memo to staff. Was it Flutter? One of the big ones has. So there has at least been a kind of, wouldn't have thought it says very much, but a notification going out
it's
throughout the business itself saying, tidy your desks.
In Ireland, it's really interesting just because just the landscape, and I know I've talked about it previously, but just the turnover tax has kind of half wiped out the independent sector over here, and you've only got a couple of operators. You've probably got Boyle Sports with 250, 300 shops, Paddy Power with 250 shops. You've probably got Ladbrokes with 40 or 50 shops left, and then a couple of independents with a small number of shops as well. I don't know, like one of the areas that always fascinated me was there's the betting terminals. When you walk into a betting shop, especially certain operators are desperate to kick you towards the betting terminals. The betting terminals prices are horrific, just in general. They're saying no, you can't have that bet behind the counter. Go to the terminal. If everyone in the country is using that same pricing feed for those terminals, and those terminals, I know that they kick out north of 20% margin for the firms as well. Um, I don't know what becomes, I don't know what becomes price fixing and what just becomes just a lack of feeds and things like that. I people outside the industry, I just struggle to believe that they can understand the industry from everything I see from people looking at it from outside. But it'd be interesting. We don't know much about this case. We know pretty much nothing about it bar these raids, and it'd be interesting to see how it develops anyway.
You make a very valid point there, I think, because one of the things that I think has in many ways allowed bookmaking to perhaps lag behind the regulatory expectations of it is that it's such a difficult, steep learning curve for people outside of the game to
Really, it
actually
is.
understand what is going on inside it. I think we're seeing perhaps it's getting closer, but
Yeah, it's like it's
the
the same
knowledge
with
gap.
it really is like you and I'm talking like really even really really smart people or like educationally smart people. You see when gambling stories are covered in the press even they just don't get it. Like you just they miss every single point. Like it's the general press. Like even very very smart lads I went to school with or uni with the really really smart ones. You try and explain gambling to them and EV and stuff like that, and these are guys that work in banks and they just don't get it. They genuinely just don't get it, and I think trying to convey that to people outside the industry is probably going to be a tough one. Um, yeah, like I said, it's going to be real interesting how this develops. But yeah, we know very little about it, and we probably won't know much about it for a while as well.
Okay, we'll move on to the levy yield, which is up to 108 million pounds for the year ending the end of March. This was in part due to the favourable Cheltenham Festival results for bookmakers, albeit concerns remain over turnover falling. What do we make of this, TC? Like, it feels a bit strange that kind of racing profits from loads of odds-on shots at a major festival being turned over, punters doing their money, but the levy goes up.
just the way it's set up, isn't it? It's always a bit odd that racing benefits from, for punters losing, but that's the case here. But yeah, they were up £8 million what they were forecast. So yeah, I think it's the biggest levy yield in 9 years. they just see and everything about Alan Del Monte. Whenever you listen to him, I listened to him on Lux podcast earlier in the week about the Great British Racing Initiative. He just seems a very impressive character across all his brief. Yeah, and like you said, it's very good news for that. And this is against a backdrop of falling, betting turnover. I think it's down 19% since 2021. So it shows you how precarious racing finances are, isn't it? I mean, if
Really,
punters had a really, really good Cheltenham, presumably you're looking at a yield of 92 million as opposed to 108 million, and it's and then, like you said, it's not as rosy against that backdrop of racing, betting interest in racing going off a cliff for various reasons. So yeah, that was a big positive for racing this week, and they also released figures. They released 11 million pounds worth of new grants. It's quite interesting if you go and have a look at that list about who actually benefits from that. I mean, obviously the big one is the 3.6 million to GBR. They've also given them a 207,000 pound grant towards communications around horse welfare as well. So they're actually getting more than 3.6 million. And it's quite interesting about the various groups they give money to. So yeah, everything about the levy board is quite impressive. The way they keep funds back for a rainy day, etc. But yeah, it's positive news for the sport, if not for punters.
Yeah, sorry, just on that, if you don't mind me jumping in, I think
of course.
I think it's quite optimal for racing that its finances are linked to punters' losses and bookmakers making money. Essentially, I think that is the ecosystem. I think changing that is very, very dangerous. I think that if you've seen in Ireland what happens to competition with turnover taxes, you see what happens with pricing. The punters body over here were commenting in the week about higher overrounds in Ireland. That's linked to turnover tax. I don't think the sport, especially at the moment, doesn't want to be tying its fortunes to turnover. I think that'd be extremely, extremely dangerous. The thing that everyone has to do to increase to the rising tide lifts all boats thing is we've just got to make the whole pie better. And look at the decisions around that. I think you're saying about the rainy day. I think when you're talking about these grants as well, like if I was horse racing, I'd be saving everything I can now, because when I look over there at the storms, it's absolutely pissing it down, and it's gonna keep moving over towards us. Yeah, I just think those numbers again are inflated. Like you could genuinely be looking at a number in the not too distant future, which is a very small percent, a much smaller version of that 108 you're saying about 92. I think my bottom forecast for Levy would be even lower than that in a worst case scenario, and I don't think it's that unlikely. But then I think that will lead people to go, oh, we need higher percentage of Levy. We need to switch to a turnover model. Those aren't the answers. They're just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic for me. We need to solve the fundamental issues around the fixture list, around taxation, around affordability, in inverted commas. They're the things that are going to move the needle. And I think everyone's getting sidetracked by everything else. And turnover's down, like you say, 19%. I always caveat that with that's turnover in the legal market. I think turnover's going up overall. It's just not being captured in the legal market.
You mentioned taxation there, and that kind of brings us on to the next story we're going to talk about, which I guess kind of feeds into the whole future of racing pie. And this is around tax rates between racing and other forms of gambling. Industry figures met with reform campaigners, and there seems to have been kind of a breaking of ranks effectively with those in racing, really forcefully pushing for, especially horse racing profits being taxed a different way to online casino profits in particular, as is the case now, Harry. I'll come to AK in a second on what impact it would have on racing should the tax rates be harmonised. But what is the current state of play?
Well, the tax is not particularly my strong area, to be honest with you, George. But the at the moment, as I understand it, revenues based on horse racing are taxed at 15%, and revenues based on remote gaming are at 21%. And we are seeing, I just want to be careful of straying into our next story here slightly, but we are that one of the potential ways forward is for that to get bigger. And one of that gap to get bigger, and one of the potential ways forward, which seemed to have been what was being mooted generally until very recently, was for them to be harmonized. And that I think is where the new fault line is going to be drawn really now and this was covered in the Gardening article, which I think we're about to come on to.
I think we're on it now.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Oh, I see. Fine. We're here. We're there.
We're there.
This is it.
You've arrived.
Yeah. So there was an article by Rob Davies in the Guardian, who follows gambling closely, and he has written about a meeting sort of hosted by the Social Media Foundation think tank, which is James Noyes, is I think perhaps the most high-profile member of it. They have been very interested in gambling for a long time, and perhaps have a reputation for being perhaps quite anti-gambling, really, over time. There's been some changes in recent months. We're told that actually they are taking on a more pro racing approach, and that they think that it should be regulated and now apparently taxed differently. I think, in fairness to the Social Media Foundation, they might have been floating that on and off for quite some time. Anyway, so this meeting took place, I think, last week, and we're told that senior members of racing, the one quoted extensively in the Guardian article, is Martin Cruddas, but others appear to have made some quite punchy submissions. But one of which was so in the surprise development. Yeah, the article was, in a surprise development likely to cause headaches for companies such as Flutter and Entain, some of the most powerful figures in racing, in effect, turn their backs on the digital slot machine and casino products. The subject was this harmonization, and basically people in racing going, well, let's not harmonize it. If you want more money, Treasury, because there were Treasury members of the senior members of the Treasury there at the meeting, if you want more money, just keep knocking up that 21% higher. Keep racing at 15% essentially, and that will have all sorts of benefits, including reducing the number of people who are using the most harmful products, and it'll come back to come back to racing. Now, I'm not as anti this as others will be. My kind of underlying philosophical belief on this is, if you can do it, then it would be a good thing, particularly for racing, to regulate and tax slots more heavily. But obviously, a lot of people will just immediately say what AK is about to say.
Okay.
Yeah, the fucking truth. Yeah. Do you remember when we used to say that?
That's your podcast title.
Yeah, like all the I shouldn't even say it, but all the innovation in sports books is offshore. It's not in the legal market anymore. All the money and all the innovation, and it's just linked to no tax, and yeah, it's really, really depressing for me. I in theory I don't have too much of a problem with the casino rate being more than the sports rate, just sports in general, to be honest with you. I think when you measure harm, I think it's slightly higher for people that play casino. I don't think it's anywhere exponentially crazily higher, but I think it would be slightly higher.
And what about cost to the operator?
Cost to the operator, it depends what deal you have. It depends what deals you have.
Just jumping in there, okay. I one of the things I think is unsatisfactory about this is that no one's ever really come up with a number as to what the difference, as I see it, a reliable number as what the difference across the different products is. In terms of problem gambling, but people generally do seem to accept that casino products, perhaps just anecdotally from going into a bookmakers, you can tell that they do appear to be. But the issue seems to me to be that with that Do you know what? I've completely forgotten the point I was just trying to
No,
make,
it's
and
okay. I think
I'm now just. It's been a
no.
long weekend.
I think horse race. I think
Jump back in.
yeah, horse racing just should get its own house in order and what it can control. I think campaigning again. You've seen how horse racing essentially threw greyhound racing under the bus in Wales recently. It's just
Mm.
all very insular. I'll be all right this week, Jack. Thinking like it's for me, it's fairly depressing. Nobody ever talks about the black market. What are the impact of this on the black market? Where's the turnover going to go? I think what will happen here is the costs will be passed on to. I fucking keep saying it over and over. I'm sick of it. I'm sure people who listen to this podcast are absolutely sick of me just repeating it. But it is my opinion every week when we discuss this thing. Is more and more turnover is migrating to the black market. It's being lost. All the revenue is being lost. All your problem gamblers that all this stuff is meant to protect are just migrating outside the legal market. My whole thing is just the money, the taxation from gambling. A good proportion of that should be grabbing hold of the GamStop list and treating the people that have problems and leaving everyone else alone to do what they want with their own money. Like it's really common sense. I think just all these inverted commas anti-gambling people are just trying to nuke gambling. You've got academics from certain universities popping up in Parliament, nearly bursting into tears because they lost a fiver on a horse and stuff like that. Like it's like, what are you? These people just aren't in the real world. Like plenty of people, vast majority of people enjoy gambling safely. This is the most regular. It's got to be the most regulated market in the world for gambling, and it's been. Is it being destroyed? Destroyed is probably a hard, the wrong word, but it's just not being done optimally, factoring in just how consumers pivot given the restrictions you put on them. Like the level of people that we turn off is just sticking to the rules as they are, and people don't want to share stuff with you. And some of these policies and suggestions coming up are like, let's have a centralized thing in, and everybody has to send in their information to. Like, honestly, you
But
need to speak to people and
if
work
you
out how many people just aren't willing to do that. So
if
how
you
are
were
you
horse
just
racing,
destroying?
AK, if you were horse racing, and bearing in mind you don't regulate gambling, and you can't do that, you can't go out if you're horse racing and just regulate gambling better, grab people by the shirt collars and say, do you have gambling problems, and help them individually. I mean, do you think horse racing is making a mistake in supporting this, as it apparently appears to be?
I think it's exceptionally naive to think that adding more tax onto casino is going to in any way help horse racing, is my opinion. Horse racing's share of the pie is declining because the product is getting worse and worse year on year. There's too much of it, there's too much dross. That is what I'd focus on if I was horse racing.
Yeah.
Getting people to engage in the legal market. And I think adding more tax, what will happen if you add more tax to casino? Casino RTP rates will decrease to cover shortfalls. Customers will, all these things, all these additional tax will mean tax will go up in, or the percentage obviously of tax.
Where I think that racing might have got a point here, I think I've made this point before, and it was the point I was trying to make earlier before my brain scrambled, is that if the bad publicity that is attached to gambling in this country, which has basically got worse and worse over the last 20 years, is almost exclusively attached to casino products.
Yeah, it was
And
for me, sorry, just to interrupt again, the bad publicity is kind of almost not justified in my opinion anymore. I think the bad publicity was justified 10 or 15 years ago when it was a bit more of a free-for-all over here.
yeah,
Um,
well, that's right, but I
it's
think
kind of
people
like
in PR would tell you it doesn't really matter if the story is true or not. It's what the kind of
yeah,
what the
see,
story
I
is.
suppose I'm just never interested in PR. I'm just always
Well, no,
interested
but
in.
if you're horse racing, you've got to be, I think is the point. And one of the people who've made submissions appear to say basically gambling is getting an absolute kicking left, right, and centre, and increasingly horse racing has tethered itself to the part of gambling that does get kicked the most in the press, and whether they can split the sport from gambling in people's minds might
So,
actually,
so
I
you,
think.
so you, so you don't get a kick in the press, and your turnover continues to decline, and probably at a faster rate. Like
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean,
for
that's.
me, yeah, I just think it's totally the wrong way to go about it. Horse racing's just got to get its act together and deliver a more compelling product and get more of and we've just got to build the pie in the regulated market. And I think listening to all these people that just want to tax, like literally openly say we're going to tax this out of existence. No, you're not. You're just going to kick it offshore, and then you're going to wash your hands of it.
Right, we've got to move on.
None of this stuff is about improving. All of this legislation is supposed to be about, and taxation is about decreasing problem gambling rates and things like that. What are problem gambling rates since all this regulation came in? Are they up? Are they down? Are they the same? It's not doing
I've cut
anything.
his mic.
Let's move on.
I've got the producer in my ear saying we've got to move on.
Yeah,
give me a count.
He's about to do a Luke Harvey and go explode live on AK.
Here he is. He's back. I've brought you all know how you feel on that AK. And yeah, I'm sure it'll be something we talk about many times in the coming weeks as well. Back to racing and the She's Perfect team, the Charlie Fellows trained horse that won the French 1,000 Guineas and was then demoted. Are set to appeal the decision. And Harry, this is an interesting case where the appeal isn't necessarily appealing the actual decision to demote She's Perfect, but more around the ride on the winner.
Yes.
Ridden by Miguel Barcelona.
Yeah, it's in France. It's being dealt with, as I understand it, by a French advocate, and I think that the rules might be slightly different there on this. Well, I know the rules are different, but in the way that they're applied might be slightly different as well. It would be unusual here for someone to try and appeal a decision of the stewards by saying actually another horse in the race should be disqualified. I'm not even sure you would be able to do it, whether you have standing to do that under the rules. I think you can appeal the steward's decision insofar as it is a decision about you, but I don't think you can go in and say, well, actually, that horse, that jockey on the another horse deployed the whip too many times, and so they should be demoted, which would put us into second place. Now, perhaps in France you can do that. I think that is the punchier side of the appeal, because I think that it puts the France Gallo board in quite difficult position, because what they appear to be saying is, oh, it's bad for the image of the sport. I don't think that France Gallo will be enormously pleased at the prospect of having to kind of deal with an attack on the way they handle the image of the sport in a big race. So I think that would be on the more hopeful side of it. For me, where they have an argument, and a decent argument, is he drops the whip. And so you've got two potential causes of the fact that the horse didn't perform as well as it might have otherwise have done in the closing stages of the race. One is the interference. Another one is that the jockey had lost his whip. Now, we live in a slightly bizarre world on this at the moment, where we sort of pretend that the whip doesn't actually make a horse go faster in the closing stages. We sort of use words like corrective and sort of, reminders and things. But no, it is a significant disadvantage not to have a whip in the final stages, particularly for flat race, a significant one. So, and he dropped it. That's got nothing to do, from the video footage I've seen. Barcelona dropped it regardless of the interference that his horse does appear to have suffered. And so I think I'd be going in there saying, look, there are two potential ways. There are two potential reasons if you think that the horse could have done better, and the interference is only one of them. And in those circumstances, I think you should, you can't be sure.
Do they call it the whip in France, or is it Le Pro Crush or something like that?
Yeah, the Le Pro Crush. Yeah.
Don't get me started on it.
Now, story around dropping field sizes in jumps racing. TC feels like a bit of a perfect storm here, ironically, because the lack of rain as well causing dry ground not ideal for or not popular with the trainers in terms of running their jumps horses.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe this story. This is against a backdrop of field sizes are 27.89% down from April the 1st to May the 11th. And that's taking in fields of 6 or fewer. So it's actually a totally unappealing product. And the BHA laudably brought in a system whereby any horse, any race in a Class 4 race or lower, attracting less than 3 runners at the declaration stage, at the overnight stage, was banned, was just cancelled, and completely understandable. Punt to see 2, 3, 4 runner races and just turn off and just don't bet on them. So it it made a lot of sense. I think there were 16. There were only 16 races actually cancelled in this, but there was a lot of lobbying from the NTF and every other organisation with a self-interest, and the BHA just caved in and they cancelled the trial. So it's just classic racing, this, isn't it? It's all about self-interest. I mean, if the bigger picture is small fields, turn off, nobody bets on it, and it's only 16 races here, so I can understand a lot of owners and trainers are disappointed, but in the bigger picture, it was the right thing to do, and the BHA actually cancelling the trial, I think it's a pretty sad move myself.
Do you know what the easiest way to increase field sizes would be? Tax the casino more. Cut the fixture list, for God's sake.
We've spoken at length about the issues in terms of the condition of weighing rooms, and especially for female jockeys. So we should mention here that there was a story in the Racing Post this week around the improvements made to the weighing room at Goodwood with Adam Waterworth. A nice quote from him, the chief executive of Goodwood, saying if one jockey remains in the sport, then it was worth it. Their new weighing room at a cost of $750,000 unveiled earlier in the week. And Newbury's set to be open, their new weighing room as well on Thursday. So hopefully some steps towards improvement there already coming about. Next up, we story about David Evans and a winner of his at Lingfield last April, who was disqualified after a banned substance was found. This is quite an interesting story, Harry, where it turns out it was, in effect, stable staff who was taking antidepressants, who had a bladder issue and was desperate for the loo, and therefore went in the box, or went in the stable.
Yeah, well, we hope it was in the stable, but it somehow managed to cross-contaminate Lady Wingalong. Look, it's a strict liability offence. Rule K2 of the rules of racing: a responsible person, which is almost always the trainer, must ensure that no category A prohibited substance is present in their horse's body at any time. And then it's Rule 11 says it's not necessary to demonstrate intent, fault, negligence, or knowing use to establish a breach of Rule K2. And then 13 says the presence of a prohibited substance in the following is sufficient evidence of a breach of Rule K2. So in other words, the mere presence, if someone holds you up at gunpoint and administers a prohibited substance to your horse, you are still in breach of this rule if you're the responsible person. So it becomes a question of penalty, and what you have to do in these hearings is really almost always left with no option other than to try and get your penalty down. So I think it's the sort of the basic one is £1,000 fine, which is as close as you can get really to being told that you've done nothing wrong because of the way the rules work. And I think that's what we got here. This is an almost impossible position for David Evans to deal with. So he's got a staff member who hasn't declared the medication because she wasn't on it when she arrived. Obviously gets onto it at some point, doesn't tell him he's got it. She's got it, has also got a bladder condition, which means that she can't get to the loo in the yard loo in time. And so it's a perfect storm, I suppose. And what's he going to do in those circumstances? I think a lot of people would say he shouldn't really be in breach of the
water cabin
liability offence.
But this is what I found confusing about this is that from reading the article, it seemed like David Evans's lawyer was arguing that he should be let off without any punishment.
Yeah.
And the reason why they fined him £1,000 is because even though they accepted that he had told his stable staff that they shouldn't go to the loo in the stables, he didn't inform them as to why, which seems an incredibly harsh reason to lose £1,000. Given that that's just kind of common human decency.
Basically, exactly.
When you need the loo, go to the toilet. Don't do it in the corner of the room that you're working in.
We've been explaining that to our 2-year-old for a few weeks.
It's a comedy sketch.
We've got it pretty quick.
AK nappies is the new idea for me.
But you're right, George, because why does that matter in circumstances where someone's got an urgent bladder issue? Exactly. She couldn't get there. And the answer is it's a fudge. It's a strict liability offence and you never get off it. But you very often spend quite a lot of time and money showing that it wasn't really your fault or there was nothing you could do about it. The BHA, there are two strands, there are two limbs to the test. One is they've got to show that you can show that you took all reasonable measures. I can't remember the language, but basically you can protect yourself to an extent. And the BHA will almost always, not completely always, but almost always say, no, you should have done more actually to avoid this happening. But this is one where you can't. So I agree. It does seem harsh, but it's a grand, and there's an element of deterrence in it. You can understand the basis of the rule, which is that it's too difficult to, well, it's not going to deter someone with an urgent bladder problem, but it's going to, you can understand why it's a strict liability rule because it's very difficult for a regulator to get in there and actually prove where it's come from. But you can get some very harsh results.
I like the idea that stable staff up and down the country in the last week or so have been called in and told exactly why when they need to go, where they should go.
Well, lots of yards have graphic content up on the walls of the racing office and things like that about where you can and can't go for a wee. It's
Well, anyway, a story now about the Shergar Cup and the ladies team, the successful winning ladies team being removed from the competition. Some pretty powerful quotes here from Holly Doyle as well, TC, around this. Seems like a bizarre decision.
A lot of people were against this, actually cancelling the ladies team because they thought it added a lot to the day with the crowds, etc. Especially Shergar Cup tends to be a non-racing crowd. I mean, people taking their kids, etc., young girls. So the idea of a ladies' team was greatly appealing to them. But I think again, we come back to the wider picture that we talk about Rachel Blackmore as well. Just it was an outdated concept having a ladies' team. I can see that, but the argument against that was it takes away a lot from the race girls on the day. A lot of them were female youngsters who actually look up to, female jockeys. So I can see both sides of this, but it's done now. So we move on. AK, you're not on the rich list. This that was released last week. Any plans for 2026?
Yeah, no. If the tax rates keep coming up, I was going to actually, I was going to borrow that container that those chicken wings are in, and sit outside the racecourse and just hold it out and see if anyone throws a few coins at me. So,
yeah. Denise has the same. She's what, 16th? I think she is.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that Anthony and Carol Banford up 1.8 billion to 9.45 billion. What do they do?
It's a good year. It's a good year.
It's a good year. I mean, I'm surprised Derek Thompson isn't on there, actually. He retires from commentary on July the 22nd, by the way. So
right.
I'm surprised he's not on there, but doesn't. Oh, no, I won't go into that.
AK, there was a HBF survey about SPs released last week.
Yeah. Just the SP overruns and a few things. I was messaging, I think he's called Steve Tilley privately as well after our exchange, and I think Steve's very interested in stats and working certain things out, but I didn't think there was much in what we were saying. But yeah, they're more than welcome to ask those questions. I suppose harking back to what I was saying before, I think I just prefer everyone focusing on the stuff that'll actually move the needle, I think.
Well, just very quickly, what was their contention, the HBF?
They were basically saying that it was around SP overrounds going up, essentially, and why that was. And then there was also a period where they were fairly static, I believe. And then as part of the text, I thought it was slightly controversial that they were basically saying maybe Irish punters should be asking why SP overrounds per runner are higher in Ireland than the UK. Well, like I was saying, I think that's fairly obvious. There's a turnover tax in addition to every other tax. Yeah, and a few other reasons as well, I think. But I just think it's fair. I think they'll go up. I similar to why I think the max bet payouts, given the quality of racing these days in general, people saying that they can't believe they're going down. I can't believe they're not going down faster. And it's the same with Overround per runner. Given all the increased costs, I can't believe it's not going up higher, to be honest with you. I think it will, unfortunately, until someone sorts the mess out.
A few more bits. The King and Queen now have a horse with Willie Mullins reaching high, who has beaten a short head at Leopardstown on Friday. Constitution Hill has been taken out of the Royal Ascot Gold Cup, predictably, after, I'm sure will be wrapped up in cotton wool. And then the aim will be to come back better and stronger next year. There was an article in the Irish Independent from Paul Kimmage around a vaccine shortage. Anything you want to touch on that, TC?
No, I started reading it and I lost the will to live. So
okay. But one thing to mention here as well: SpreadEx were issued a £2 million fine from the Gambling Commission. Harry, anything on this?
No, SpreadEx are always an interesting one, which is that they are governed by both the Gambling Commission and the FCA. So the Gambling Commission regulates their casino and fixed odds license, the FCA their financial trading and spread bet products. So they are very heavily regulated, and I should think it's a bit of a nightmare being regulated by two bodies. But there's just an interesting statement from the Gambling Commission on that subject, where he said during the review it was found that one customer showing markers of harm was using products across areas overseen by two different regulators. As the gambling regulator, we stress the importance of licensees understanding and managing cross-channel usage in their anti-money laundering and social responsibility prices. So whether they're saying there that actually we apply slightly higher standards than the FCA in certain regards, or whether there might even be more to come from the FCA for SpreadEx here, is quite hard to tell. But yeah, so that's the only interesting angle, I think, of the SpreadEx fine.
Well, that's quite interesting, actually, to see if the FCA is saying, it'd be interesting just to see if the FCA is saying there's no issues here, just with the way we do things, and UKGC is saying there's lots of issues. I think it's quite an interesting comparison.
Well, one of the things I always think is quite strange about the line they draw there is that I think, and if anyone can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think I'm right in saying that sports spread betting is not regulated by the Gambling Commission; it's regulated by the FCA because it's a spread betting financial product.
And that's right.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
I think a lot of people don't quite realise that. I think
it just seems an incredibly punchy fine. I mean, I don't know how big
big fine,
are as a business, but
wait, it's another one where they've been done in recent years, and I think it was quite a you got the sense the Gambling Commission were getting slightly frustrated by perhaps a failure to have learnt from previous fines.
Okay, on to questions now. JD asks or says Jim Crowley took a lot of criticism for his ride on Al Arsi. Personally, having seen the horse for a number of years, I have sympathy for Crowley, but there were plenty saying he didn't try. Thoughts, TC?
I think he just sat too far off a very slow pace. If you're up with a pace there, it paid dividends. The horse is notoriously tricky. I did go back and have a look at it a couple of times, and it did look bad. But Crowley's quite a quiet rider, not one of my favourites, and the horse needs to be kind of like dropped in. But yeah, I'd give him a pass there. But it's probably a bad tactical ride more than anything else.
On a similar line, David, thoughts on Tanala try and say that quickly. Thoughts on Tanala at Wexford, please. I was on course and the amount of disgusted racegoers was terrible. And that's even with the Fav winning the race. These blatant non-triers, I believe, are driving people away from racing. Not so much sympathy for this one.
No. I just when I looked at that ride, I just think this is what GBR are up against. They'll chuck 3.6 million at the Going is Good initiative.
Mm-hmm.
But then people look at a ride like that and think, do I really want to get involved with this sport? And I just think, because racing is fundamentally a bit iffy, isn't it? I mean, the handicap system encourages, toing and throwing there. But this particular ride, it was pretty bad. Ted Walsh has got he's got a £3,000 fine, found guilty of whatever he was found guilty of. The horse got suspended for 60 days and the jockey got 14 days suspension. Ted Walsh is appealing it. Fair play to him. He backed his jockey up, said he told him not to hit it with a whip. The horse was having his chasing debut. So there were, and he was up against a far superior horse ratings wise in the winner, but you have to show a bit more than minimal effort. And lights have gone out. And yes, so I can fully see why the stewards came to the conclusion they did. Walsh is appealing. Be interesting to see what his appeal centres on, but that's to be seen. But yes, it looked pretty bad.
Stuart asked the question that we're all asking. Did AK do much business on Eurovision?
We did.
Is that personal business or AK bets?
Did a bit of both. Yeah, no, it was really
any bad each ways at Eurovision this year?
Well, I was going to actually talk about that just from a pricing strategy point of view. We were pretty much best price everybody, as is standard for events that people watch on TV. We bet 3 places, full disclosure, so you could pretty much get 4 places with everyone. We were 3 places. We were pretty much better priced than everyone on everything, but with 3 places. It was 66 to 1 bar 5 or 6. It was probably 200 to 1 bar 7 or 8. It was like it was a horrific. I wouldn't have wanted to go 4 places on it. I had 4 bets in it myself. I bet the winner and I bet the third. Bet Estonia each way at 40s as well. Didn't need the 4 places.
What price was the winner?
Should have took the 66 with AK 3 places, but yeah. What price I bet the winner? I think it was 130, 4 places, and I was on Estonia at 40s. I was 2 in and throwing with betting France. I ended up shouldn't have done.
What are you doing here? Like, as in terms of research, what's the process that leads you to these?
Mainly maths. And, I didn't listen to any songs. I can't tell you who.
The exchange price, and then back in the one closest to that win only.
Not particularly. Not to do. It's more to do with the each way and how that blends into those prices. I didn't watch it. I didn't know one single act. I didn't listen to one single song. I didn't look at one running order.
But you knew you having good bets.
Yeah, and I had 4 decent bets on it. Yeah, because just because 4 places it's fairly mad on that stuff. But yeah, we bet it very, very hard, and I think we lost small. It's standard for us.
So Stuart, the answer to your question is yes on all fronts.
Yeah.
Derek O'Donnell, Tony, interested in your thoughts on why journalism wasn't disqualified due to the dangerous and reckless ride that caused the interference. If you see the overhead footage, it's crazy what his jockey did.
Yeah, I mean, dirt racing in America looks pretty lawless, doesn't it? It looked absolutely terrible. There was a barging match up the straight, but it's interesting. He's talking about the drone shot before the actual problem in the straight, and the jockey. I imagine that would get chucked out over here, or he would have got a very long fine. But just looking at people's reaction to it, they just think it's part and parcel of the sport over there. So I'm surprised there wasn't any kind of like sanctions against him and the winner, but there wasn't. But I think
it looked like one of those demolition derbies. They're so keen on
it. Yeah. It like I said, I don't think it has any relevance to UK punters because I don't think they bet on it. So yeah.
Duff Trader, not racing, but instead a betting related question. Did AK notice the significant liquidity on the exchange for the PGA Championship this week? And any thoughts as to why so liquid this week? And is it a one-off? Masters a few weeks ago, for example, wasn't nearly so liquid and a bigger event.
Yeah, my understanding is obviously the exchange will be win only, and then there's commission rates included in that as well. My understanding is just there's a couple of big liquidity providers on golf, and the 2 main exchanges usually fight over win them. And I think Matchbook probably used to have more liquidity on golf on the win markets, and it's probably flipped a little bit back towards Betfair actually. There always is. I think in the majors, it's the other events that you can't get 50p on basically. It's the big liquidity providers will mainly from the States, I think, in whatever way that's set up in the company wise. But I'd imagine the origins of it is from elsewhere. The start of the chain. But there was plenty of liquidity there, win only, and with the usual commission rates.
Right, and finally, a question for everybody. Chris Graham, given Luke Harvey's antics trying to eat hot chicken wings, I love the attempt of trying to eat. TV Gold, pissed myself laughing. Chris's words, not mine. What is the worst racecourse food the panel have tasted? Harry, you've been at a racecourse. I mean, I'd love to eat those chicken wings myself.
Well, actually, it wasn't food. I don't want to get anyone into trouble, but at Cheltenham, I had an Irish coffee from a specialist Irish coffee stand, which effectively required me to remortgage my house.
Weirdly,
it was the most disgusting thing I think I've ever had in my life.
My answer was going to be coffee at Cheltenham.
There you go.
You cannot find a coffee that doesn't taste of like either dirt or kind of rocket fuel.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid adding whiskey, very meager amount of whiskey to it didn't work.
Shouldn't that help?
It didn't on this occasion.
I don't think I've had it. I go on the lines of eating is cheating when I'm out racing.
Wow.
Hardcore.
It's like why everyone goes out, go out on an all-dayer, and then everyone says, "Oh, come down the calf for a kind of like massive fry-up." I can't eat before I go on the piss. So
Wow.
I drink on an empty stomach. It's
Does that explain a few things? I don't know.
Oh God, yeah, memory loss.
Yeah.
The mushy peas and chips at Newcastle were always very good. That was a treat.
Okay, what's it like over in Ireland?
Generally good. Really good. You have good food everywhere and bad food everywhere. I think it's Galway. I just remember Galway's some real good food options. I remember darting towards a chicken stand, and last year I paid €19.20 random amount for like 4 chicken nuggets and a bit of chips, like unbelievable price. And I literally bit into it and just fucked it in the bin. Basically, it was absolutely.
I had 101 job here. Anthony will whinge about Coke or Pepsi or whatever.
Yeah, no, it winds me up. The Punchester. I'll revisit it, right? Because even the woman that I dealt with, a random story as well. I was in the park the other day with my kids, and we went to the ice cream van, and it was the woman that served me a load of ice creams at Punchestown. And I was like, I remember you. You were at Punchestown serving me the ice creams. It's just looking at me like it's an absolute weirdo. But Punchestown do it unbelievably well, but they've a deal with Pepsi. And in Ireland, I don't even know if you have it in England. It's Club Orange or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Pepsi and Club Orange when everybody wants to drink Coke and Fanta, as far as I can see. And you just lads be like, get me a Coke, and then you've got Pepsi, or you can bring them back.
Do you actually throw the Pepsi back at people if they give you a Pepsi when you're?
Or if she says we don't have Coke, we've got Pepsi, it's just like, well, I'm not having it then.
Sounds like that's another one for competition law in Ireland.
Yeah.
Tipped off by a man with a strangely Northern English accent. Yeah.
Right.
Right. What I would say is that whatever that plate of whatever Luke Harvey had looked nicer than anything I think I've ever seen at a racecourse before. So maybe it was a bit hot.
Just disappointing. He's a complete fraud.
Right, there we have it. Thank you for watching this week's episode of The Racing Room. As I say, please do like and subscribe and comment and review and everything else because it does help us out. And check out AK Bets. If you haven't got an account already, make sure you sign up. Check out AK's Big Prices at the top end of the site as well for all the big prices across different sports over the course of the week. Is that right? Big prices this week?
I hope so, yeah. There's plenty of them on there, I think. Yeah. Big prices, big rewards, Josh. You know yourself.
Big rewards, big prices, big rewards, big bad each ways.
Big tax bill.
We'll be back again next week. But yeah, in the meantime, enjoy the racing and we'll see you then.